My name is Kurt Lieber. I am the Chief Information Security Officer for Aetna. Going to talk to you today about digital identity and blockchain for healthcare. Why healthcare, you ask? Because as you know, healthcare is renowned for providing high-quality services at a low price. No, let's be honest, healthcare is a dumpster fire, at least in the United States. We are not here to solve all of healthcare problems, but I think there is at least one that we might be able to help with, and that is around digital identity. Rather than just have me drone on about some of the problems that we've noticed from a digital identity standpoint, I thought we could start with a relatively short video that simply represents 2 different days in the lives of a healthcare consumer.
This is Melissa. She is signing up for a new insurance plan, and she has to answer a lot of questions. Oops, she just had an accident and needs to see a doctor. Melissa calls a nearby doctor's office. After she goes through all the menu options, the receptionist answers.
Do you have insurance? Make sure to bring your insurance card.
In pain, Melissa arrives at the doctor's office, hoping to see someone as soon as possible. However, she is asked to fill out forms and wait.
Use this code to create an online account on our portal and find your test results. May I see your driver's license and insurance card, which I need to verify before a doctor can see you.
The receptionist has to call the insurance company to confirm Melissa's coverage and status.
For English, please press 1.
Meanwhile, poor Melissa continues to wait. Melissa finally sees a doctor, gets a prescription, and goes to the pharmacy. After waiting for about 15 minutes in line, it's finally her turn.
Can I see your driver's license and insurance card?
Melissa grudgingly hands over license and insurance card and thinks to herself, "What? My info again?"
Thank you. Give us about 30 minutes to prepare your prescription.
Poor Melissa. All she wants to do is go home and rest, but she has to wait again. The next day, Melissa wants to check her lab results from the patient portal. However, the login requires her to create another username and password and enter the code the doctor's office provided. She has misplaced the paper with the code and now has to call their help desk. I wish passwords would just go away. Melissa's healthcare needs were finally met, but it took a lot of effort and time on her part. From yesterday to today, she had to submit her information multiple times, remember passwords, and wait in line.
Okay, so you get the idea. And I forgot, this is the Identiverse version of the video, which is compressed down, so you didn't see sort of the alternate approach. But the consumer experience today is fairly miserable, and you don't need me to tell you that. You can just think about the last time that you went to your doctor and you experienced a lot of those same things. You go into your doctor's office, you fill out a bunch of forms in triplicate, you go then to your pharmacy to pick up your prescription, and you have to provide all of the same information, or at least much of the same information again, and there's really no good reason for it except that we're all different companies, and that is something that is unique about healthcare. Whereas in many other industries, the companies compete with one another. We certainly compete within healthcare, but then we also have to cooperate because of the way that the healthcare ecosystem, at least in the United States, is structured. When you think about not only the poor user experience, but also the fact that none of us, healthcare companies, are going to stand up and say, hey, my identity is core to my go-to-market experience, or my consumer identity is core to my go-to-market experience, it means that we're all spending a bunch of money on IAM infrastructure that maybe we don't have to if there was a cheaper way of doing it. And then, and this is something that's not unique to healthcare, but anytime you need to do any sort of identity proofing, you're talking to Equifax or Experian or any of those guys that charge you anywhere from 75 cents to $2 per transaction to do a low quality proof. So all in all, that's the problem statement. It's not a good experience. We think we can do better. And in fact, that is what we are trying to promote, is a clicker that works, is really having I think I've covered most of this. The other portion, yeah, so that's the consumer identity experience, and then there's also the provider experience from a doctor's standpoint. So anytime, some of you may not realize this, but anytime you show up into a doctor's office or an emergency room or a hospital, the people that are there actually have to go through a fairly extensive credentialing process to make sure that they have the licenses and certifications that they need in order to provide you the care that you're looking to get. That's a good thing. We want to continue that, but there's a tremendous amount of effort that goes into that behind the scenes, including a horrendous cost associated with that. That's another area where if we can provide a different way of approaching it, we can save quite a bit of money from the overall experience. So what does that mean? That means that if we can come together as an industry and create a portable identity, and again, identity itself is not anything that anybody is going to say is core to our go-to-market strategy. Think of it like a digital driver's license. And then all of us consume that identity. That creates a much more positive experience of both from a consumer standpoint, a provider standpoint, and really it makes the whole thing much more seamless. So what is the portable ID? The portable ID, it is, as I said, it's a digital driver's license. It improves the user experience across the board. It is something that's built on open standards. We're not looking to try to reinvent the wheel. It is in proof of concept stage. Aetna and CVS are behind the scenes implementing this into our member-facing mobile application. What it is not, it does not and will never, as long as I have a say about it, store PHI. That is the number one question we get. What about medical records? Not going to do it. And then, as you might imagine, that also means it's not a replacement for an EMR system. It is just a digital driver's license. We're not trying to, as I said, we're not trying to replace industry frameworks. Where those exist and they complement what we're trying to do, we will absolutely use those. It is not a replacement for your existing IAM infrastructure. This is something where we're very cognizant we can't come in and say, hey, to make this work, you should throw out everything you have and replace it all with this new cool stuff. That's just not reality. That's not how companies operate. So it is designed to sit alongside and complement your existing IAM infrastructure. So let's see. As I mentioned, the platform itself, this is something that can be used by all of the different entities within healthcare, providers, patients, pharmaceutical, anybody and everybody. This is designed to be an open, supported standard that can be used by anybody within healthcare. We've got issuers, we've got relying parties. Issuers are the ones that actually issue the identities, cleverly named, and then relying parties, those are entities that don't necessarily have to be held to the same standard as an issuer, but they can certainly consume and rely on those identities for whatever purposes they may wish to use them. This does another aspect of healthcare, at least today and probably for the next decade or so. Predominantly when you get healthcare, you get it in person. There's certainly teledocs and things like that, but for the most part, when you go in to see a doctor, you're going into their office. That presents us with a unique situation where we then can provide a proofing experience that many other industries cannot. Where we can, and the app has this sort of built into it, where we can walk whether it's the receptionist or whomever is checking you in on the provider side, we can walk them through checking an identity, making sure that things match up, the face is who the person is in front of you, and get to a level of proofing that is very difficult for other industries to do. So imagine now having a level 3 oldness standard, level 3 proofed identity that historically you would have to pay, as I said earlier, a couple bucks to get to even a level 2. So there's a proofing component to this that is significantly improved as well. So I am not going to continue to just talk at you here on this. I'm going to ask Prakash over here, who is the brains behind the organization, to provide you with an overview of the tool itself.
All right, thanks, Kurt. Can you guys hear me? Yep. So my name is Prakash Sundarsan. I'm co-founder and CTO of TrustedKey. And TrustedKey is an early-stage startup. We provide a digital identity platform for use cases and scenarios like what Kurt described. And we leverage mobile phones, cryptography, and blockchain technology. Those are kind of the 3 pillars of our platform. And I apologize if you're wondering why I've been stuck behind the lectern here. This laptop is in danger of sliding off of it any moment, so I have to stay here and hold it up in addition to doing the talk. Okay. All right, so I'm going to talk about Portable ID, which is a pilot project that we did in partnership with Aetna and others in the healthcare ecosystem, and also EY as our integrated partner. So what is Portable ID? Kurt talked about the vision for identity in healthcare, right? So Portable ID is a pilot that tries to make that vision come to life. Clearly, the goal is one identity across all of healthcare, so that you don't have to have that process that Melissa went through, where everywhere she goes, she has to spend 10 minutes filling out her information. But beyond that one identity, there's a set of other goals that we had in mind when we are sort of redesigning identity from the ground up, if you will, right? You don't get an opportunity to do something like this very often, so when you do have an opportunity, we want to make sure we get it right. And part of getting it right are these pillars that are listed here. So first of all, user controlled. So that's very, very important, right? Users should be able to own their information. They should be able to control when they share, with whom they share, what they share, right? So that's kind of built-in consent, and this is not only mandated by regulations like GDPR, but it's also just the right thing to do, especially in healthcare. So that's number one. Number two is open, and as Kurt described, it should be open for any number of parties to plug in if we really want this to be widely accepted and adopted within healthcare. So doctors' offices, hospitals, insurance companies, pharmas, anybody who has a standards-compliant implementation should be able to plug in pretty easily, and we'll talk about the standards-based in a little bit. Third thing is end-to-end secure, right? So if we're going to have a single digital identity, it better be end-to-end secure, which means not only no passwords, and we don't have any passwords in our system, it's all cryptography, challenge response, PKI based, but even beyond that, no software keys. So I'm sure some of you in the audience appreciate the importance of that. If you're using software keys, everything will be fine until it's not. And one day you will wake up and there'll be a Spectre meltdown type of a vulnerability, and you don't want to be in the headlines the next day saying 100 million private keys have leaked because there's a once-in-a-decade chip-level flaw. So we want to be resilient to those type of attacks. Ease of use. We can have the most secure and fancy system we want. If it's not easy to use, nobody's going to use it. It's going to sit, and it's not going to do us any good, right? So that has to be built in. And finally, distributed trust. So again, for a system to be accepted across an industry like healthcare, it cannot be under the control of a single entity, even though it might be a most trusted entity like an Aetna. It has to be shared, where participants in that ecosystem can collaborate, can have equal sort of stake, visibility, and control over what is going on. And that's where blockchain plays a role. It's not the be-all, end-all of the solution, but it's a foundational layer and an aspect in the solution. Okay. So instead of talking about it, let me actually show you a video of what the pilot that we built looks like. There we go. So I'm going to have to pause this at a few points to just make a few points. So Portable ID in this demo is an app, and it serves as your digital identity wallet. So just think of it as an app on your phone that has your identity, has all the attributes from various issuers, and then you can use that to prove your identity to whoever is asking you to prove your identity. Okay? And when the user first downloads and installs the app, they are taken through a few introductory screens, and then we ask them to either set a PIN or enable biometrics. Why do we do this? A, because we want to have this app always be protected. Even if you left your phone unlocked, we don't want it to be the case that somebody picks up your phone and now has access to your identity, right? So we always lock the app even if your phone is unlocked. And in the background, what we're actually doing is creating a public-private key pair, which is the foundation of your identity. We want that set of credentials to be born secure, not created and then secure it. First we secure it, then we create it. right? So again, just to make sure everything is born secure. Okay, so that's one thing. Okay, the next thing we do is have the user register a unique identifier. In this case, it turns out to be an email, it could be a phone number, it could be some other unique identifier. This is going to be the single identifier the user needs to remember across the entire ecosystem. Okay, because of email address, we'll send them a one-time email, confirm that they actually control that email. After that, we have nothing to do with that email address or that email account itself. It's just a moniker that the user has that they can use anywhere. Okay. And you'll see how the user uses that. So now we have an identity wallet. The user has secured it. They've onboarded an email address. We've done a mapping from that email address to this device. But we still don't know who this user is. There's no identity here, right, other than the email. So how do you bootstrap an identity? Well, you use an existing relationship the user already has in this case. There are other ways of doing it. But let's assume the user is an existing Aetna user. They have an existing Aetna account. Aetna's already done the proofing because the journey in healthcare starts with the insurance company, right? So in this case, the user can use that existing account to log in and then import, if you will, their digital identity. So this is similar to, finance aggregator apps, that type of experience. You click on Aetna, you enter, again, one time your Aetna username password, and based on that, Aetna will digitally sign and issue this user a digital identity. And that's going to show up in just a second. And so let me pause that there. So this is the details of the identity. It's obviously a sample identity, John Doe. But a few points I want to make. First of all, it has all the attributes that the user and the healthcare community cares about. So in fact, we had a working group that had many, many meetings to decide what the schema in healthcare should be for a user. Okay? And then each of those attributes, first name, last name, gender, date of birth, and so on, is individually issued. So this gives fine-grained control to both the issuer as well as the user. The user can say, yes, I'll share my first and last name with you, but you have no business knowing my gender. I don't want to share that. Right? So it's built-in fine-grained control. And then you see those 2 stars at the right. So this is what Kurt alluded to. Some of you might be familiar with NIST 800-633 identity assurance levels. So we actually had to extend that. That has 3 levels. We extended that to 4 levels, so it's more applicable to healthcare. And these identities here are being issued at level 2 because they are online proofed. If they were in-person proofed, it would be a 3, and then we have also a definition for what is a level 4 identity. Okay? And each of these is a cryptographically signed identity claim, as it's called. Signed by Aetna, the issuer, referencing the public key of the user. And that's how this identity claims are tied to the user. Nobody else can use it except this user. If I try to use your identity claim, it won't work. Right? So that's, again, a very powerful feature of this platform. Just because I have your identity claim doesn't mean that I can pretend to be you. Today, that's not true in the paper world, right? If I have your driver's license, I can probably get into most places pretending to be you. Okay? All right, now that I have an identity, what can I do with it? Well, I want to go see a doctor just like Melissa. So I go to the mobile app of the doctor's office, demo clinic, intelligently named, and I want to register, but I register using portable ID. I type in that email address, and I get a notification saying this clinic is asking for some information. And you saw there, I used my Face ID to unlock the app because my portable ID app is always locked. Inside it now, I can see the request. I can see the logo of Demo Clinic. I know it's from Demo Clinic. I saw a 6-digit code that Demo Clinic showed me. It's the same 6-digit code here, so I know it's that request. And I see the attributes that they're asking for. Some are mandatory, some are optional. And I can turn off, if an attribute is optional, I can turn it off. So once I decide what to share, I share that. And now all that information is packaged up, returned to the clinic, and I'm actually returned to the clinic app. And now you see all that information showed up. So just basically 2 clicks and you're there instead of the 10-minute, paper fill out. And in fact, I can use this same functionality to even log in to the same account later. So again, if I come back to demo clinic, I've logged out, logged back in. Login is type in my email, a request shows up, I pull down on the notification, hit confirm, show my face to my phone, and I'm logged back in to the demo clinic app. So it's actually built-in sort of passwordless authentication as well as an identity system. And then the last part of this is the in-person experience. These are digital experiences, but you can use the digital identity also when you go to the clinic and you want to check in. The clinic can show you a QR code. You scan that with your phone. That turns into a similar kind of request. And again, you are always told what is being requested. You have the chance to turn it off or not share that information. But when you do, you're automatically checked into the clinic, and the clinic, just give it a second, it'll scroll, has all the information that you just shared. And each time, it is those digitally signed claims, so the clinic does not have to wonder whether you made up this information or you're using somebody else's identity. It is signed by Aetna. It references this user's public key. They know it is yours. Okay? So that was kind of the quick version of the demo. Just to recap on the highlights, super fast identity verification, bootstrapping, seamless account registration, just a couple of clicks, and strong multi-factor authentication can be also used as a passwordless login in addition to the identity system, right? And all based on strong cryptography, no passwords anywhere in the system. So this was a pilot that we completed about a few months ago, and we got a lot of good feedback from the healthcare community. One of the pieces of feedback, a lot of the feedback was really positive in terms of achieving the goals that Kurt defined in the vision, but it required the user to download a new app called Portable ID. And that is a friction point, right? How are hundreds of millions of users going to download a new app? So based on that feedback, what we're now working on is taking that functionality, which is built on the TrustedKey SDK, and embedding the SDK into existing apps the users already have. So for example, an Aetna app, others in the ecosystem who are interested in providing the same type of digital identity wallet functionality in their app. Typically, it would be health insurance companies because that's where the journey starts, right? So a healthcare identity ecosystem, you could have multiple apps from different providers. You could be, just to pick a name, you could be a Kaiser user, and you could have a Kaiser app with an identity built in. I could be an Aetna user, and we could be in the same ecosystem accessing the same clinics and hospitals and pharmacies and so on. That's the vision. And underlying all that is a blockchain. We haven't really talked much about why we need a blockchain in this. I touched on that a little bit, but it really provides the trust layer. So blockchain has some interesting characteristics that are useful here. It's immutable, it's massively replicated, and every transaction is digitally signed. So you don't have to wonder about why was this record here, or why is this not here, who changed what. It's all tracked, right? And what do we do on the blockchain? We don't put any PII. There's not your name or address or anything like that. People think blockchain, PII, bad combination. We don't have to put any PII. All we do is record the state of every digital identity wallet and every identity claim. When it's issued or created, we make a record saying this hex address has been created. When it's revoked, we make another entry saying it's been revoked. When we haven't talked about recovery, but that's an important scenario. We can take that offline. When you move your identity from one device to the other, we record that. But there's no PII, and it just, if there wasn't a blockchain, every relying party would have to go talk to every issuer saying, hey, you issued this claim, is it still valid? That's what the blockchain, in simple terms, is doing, right? Providing global state in a massively replicated way. Okay? I think that's the end of the prepared talk that we have. We're happy to take questions on current state and futures. Thank you.
Right there.
I have two questions. The first one is regarding the wallet security. In case that you show the app on your phone, what kind of security do you expect from the wallet? And in case that if you use your phone and
Yes.
buy a new one, what happened there?
Yes.
The second one is regarding the blockchain itself. Can you talk about blockchain use?
Yes. Should I? All right. So actually, both questions are really good questions. Wallet security obviously is super important, right? Without that, we have nothing. If you're going to create an identity wallet and then it's not secure, it's not very useful. So a few things. As I showed you, we leverage the on-device biometrics to protect the app itself. We don't put any biometrics on the server side. We are not creating any new giant database of biometrics that can be hacked. That stays on your device. We use the secure enclave or the trusted execution environment. We create private keys. They stay in there. Apple cannot extract them. We cannot extract them. Nobody can extract them. Right? That's a central design point. And your point on what happens if I lose my phone, what happens if I buy a new phone, those are very important scenarios. If you lose your phone, that's why the app stays locked. So even though your phone is lost, you cannot use it, but nobody else can use it either. But there's a way for you to migrate your identity from one device to the other without extracting the keys. And that's part of our patented IP. And we can talk more about the details of how we do that. We provide multiple ways for the user to do that. Either they take responsibility themselves, or they delegate responsibility to, for example, their wallet provider, which would be an Aetna. So either way, there's a way to migrate from one device to the other.
So
Yeah.
I think we're out of time here, unfortunately.
Okay.
Just to be respectful to the other presenters. I know Prakash and I are going to be around here for a while. You're welcome to bring up any other questions that you might have of us.
Great. We'll be right there.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.